Hello. Welcome to Revelator Alf. Yeah, it's a radio podcast thing. Yeah, talking all things motorcycles, talking all things what's been happening the last few days, and anything goes. Anything goes on this live show, going out simultaneously on YouTube and Twitch. So have your say. Let us know where you're at, what you're up to. I'm just going to be covering some of the latest stories today, and then really, I suppose that the main crux of this, or the main topic, I should say, the main topic of today's show is about Indian motorcycles. They've just released a brand new motorcycle that'll be coming out later this year, 2023. It's the Sport Chief. And I'll be digging into that a little bit. I'll be talking about my experience of going to see a dealership the other day and riding the FTR R Carbon. Might have seen a couple of shorts that I've made of there. I've got a video coming out there, a little kind of very quick review, but it's not really a review, just like a once over of what I thought of it. That's coming out on Friday. So there's, and also some things that I heard while I was there as well. And it's always really interesting for me to hear another side of the story or another side of the argument. And I thought it was very interesting. Whilst I didn't have an in-depth conversation, it was interesting to hear other people's point of view in terms of from Indians' perspective. And I suppose I'd really like to dig into that a lot more, actually, in time. But say the chat is open. Let me just make sure that's all working. Let me just type a quick messages here. See if that's all showing up on there. Yes, it is. So there's quite a bit going on in the biking world. As I say, I mean, you can always check out my channel or my website on all the social channels that I've got as well. You can support via PayPal or Patreon as well, putting content up there for anybody who's interested there as well. You obviously just subscribe, just spread the word about the channel, spread the word. So hopefully it will grow even further. And obviously the website is having daily blogs out there right now. Of lots of motorcycle related news items and motorcycle manufacturers and stuff like that. So go check that out, revelatoralf.com. So there's lots of information there as well. And I say I do have the chat open here, so you're more than welcome to have your say and let us know where you're, what you're doing and where you're up to and all that sort of stuff. Right. So I think that is all good. I'm just making sure that all my settings are all working. I do believe they are. That's great. TM13A, hello there. How are you? Thank you for joining, and anybody else watching, and anybody else watching later on as well. If you're not catching this live, I am coming out just after 5 p.m. UK time. I do plan to be on for an hour plus, an hour and a half, something like that. See how we go. I've just released, for those of you in the sporting persuasion, I've just now released, before I came on air, a little short. If you've been following the boxing the last few months, the British fighter Conor Benn, who failed a couple of drug tests. Anyway, WBC have just reinstated him on the rankings because they couldn't find any solid evidence to say that he'd taken this banned substance intentionally, and what they're saying is that it's come from eating eggs. But there we go. So that short kind of explains it all. But there we go, going around that. Right, PBO fan, not too sure about the fairing on the Sport Chief. I'll dig into that. Dan Callahan, hi from Callahan, just listening while I work from home. Well, thank you, Dan. Okay, so do you know what? Let's just get straight into the stories. And I talk, then I'll talk about Indian. Okay, so today's show, as I say, is going to focus about Indian, but I'm really going to quickly run through the other stories first of all, and then we'll just get on to Indian first of all as the main thing. There isn't a lot of stories here today over the last 24 hours or so, but I thought that'd bring it to you. Okay, so here we are right now. Let me just get rid of that. Why is that like that? Well, that's weird. There we go. Hold on. I think I've got the wrong page up. There we go. That's the one I wanted. Right, so essentially what's happened here, this is from the Motorcycle News. There's a small motorcycle manufacturer here in the UK called Hesketh. Been around for a while. They produce a couple of bikes, bespoke bikes really, but they're going into insolvency because of a problem with a failed delivery of a motorcycle to a customer. The story is a little bit vague. I've tried to do a bit of digging. I've gone onto my website and put a blog post out about it as well, but it's a bit vague. So basically, there's a chap here who's put in an order for this for a Hesketh Sonic Cafe Racer type bike, and he put £10,000 down. It was supposed to be made within 2 or 3 months, a few months, and 2 years later he still hadn't got the bike. So there's lots of to and fro in. The communication completely broke down, and basically this guy is taking Hesketh motorcycles to get the money back, and made them go insolvent really. So it's just over 10 grand. I mean, I know times are hard at times, but obviously it's not been a good time. Hesketh, weirdly enough, had just released a 450cc motorcycle as well called the Heresy. So very interesting to see what's going on here. But there we go. They might be going out of business, Hesketh, if this goes on. Now, I wouldn't be surprised somebody comes in and pays this other guy off, pays off the debts, maybe takes a bit of a stake in the motorcycle company themselves. It's a very small bespoke motorcycle company, like a boutique brand by the Hesketh. So it could be that something can, but you would have thought just for 10,000, surely they won't be going insolvent just for 10,000. But there we go. That's something to keep in mind. Okay, here's another story close to my heart really. I love off-road riding, as you know, but here's a story, very quick story. I'm going to brush over it. The area of UK called Derbyshire, it's one of the counties, it's sort of the middle of the country, middle to the north. They do there's lots of off-road riding trails, and basically there's a criticism here from one of the off-road riders saying, well, actually the local council are trying to tarmac or put asphalt on these off-road trails. They're basically saying, well, why are you spending the money on these off-road trails where we're perfectly happy riding on dirt and mud, and why don't you just fix up the normal road? So it's got a point. It's got a point. Just leave the off-road trails to being off-road. You don't have to put tarmac down so people can have nice leisurely country walks. No, just concentrate on the roads, which is I thought was a fair point really. Okay, I thought this is quite an interesting one here. I say I'm brushing through the stories because I actually just want to get onto the Indian story here. Lex Moto, the Chinese brand here, have just released this retro RSS Street 125 naked. Look, it's a 125. It's a Chinese bike, but actually it looks quite nice. I quite like that. A lot of these bikes have this kind of the number plate just hugging the rear tyre, and there's this whole gap here just under the seat, which I'm not sure if I like that or not, but there we go. So that's that one there. There's another 125 Scrambler coming out from Brixton, the Felsberg 125XC. Brixton, they sound like a British brand, but they're actually another Chinese brand, I believe, as well. So very low powered, very small cc. It's very retro, yeah. I mean, it kind of looks quite nice. Here's another quick story here from Superbike News, this one. And this is from the Triumph team. Triumph Motorcycles TE1, their electric motorcycle prototype, where it's basically won an award at the GQ Car Awards. So it's one of the best electric motorcycle or something like that. I mean, it looks nice. It looks the part. I mean, it looks pretty decent actually. But it's only a prototype. I don't think there's any plans for it to be put in production just yet. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Right. Okay. There's a few other stories. I'm just gonna get rid of those because you know what? I think we need to get straight onto the main order of business. Right. The main order of business. Right. So before I get into the Indian, obviously. I just thought this was funny, right? Okay, I got a press release this morning. Was it or last night? I think it was last night or this morning. Anyway, from Harley Davidson, basically saying about the European 120th anniversary that's happening in Budapest around the Puskás Stadium, football stadium, right? And it's basically the headliners or the musical acts over the 2 or 3 day period, who's actually going to be there. And I've got to say, I mean, maybe I'm showing my age. Maybe I'm so out of touch with the music these days, but I'd never heard of any of them. The only one I've heard of was Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple. But there's another one called Wolf Mother, Airborne, Larkin Poe. There's a load of Hungarian acts there as well. I mean, I know the old Eastern European blocks, they do like a lot of their rock music still. Strange Kind of Women, Danko Jones, Anna and the Barbies, The Picture Books, Pokol Gep, Edda Muvek. Sorry, I just don't know. I mean, when the Americans have got, who is it? The Foo Fighters and Green Day. I know who they are, but the rest, I mean, I'm probably being very disrespectful to these bands. I don't mean to be. It's just I don't know who they are. So it's almost like you sent me this big press release of this big event that you're going to have for the European Harley Davidson contingent, and you've got all these acts there that I've never heard of, and it's just like, well, okay, I'll probably give that a miss then. Do you know what I mean? Right. Okay. Let's get on to. Well, let's get on to this next thing, shall we? Okay, right, Indian motorcycles, as we know. Where have they been? What have they been up to? And you kind of think, well, is there anything that they can do to really start attacking Harley Davidson? So what they've done now, they've just released this new Sport Chief, and I'll bring you up a few. Oops, wrong one. I'll bring you up a few pictures. Here we go. Right, so this is the new Sport Chief. So, PBO fan. I'm not sure about the fairing, so I'll bring on to that because I noticed the same thing. I love the rest of the bike, but I'm not sure about the fairing. So here we are. It's almost like the fairing is just a little bit of a box there. But I think that the whole bike looks really, really nice. I like the Chief anyway. But there's kind of sporty lines. And then basically, it's the same Chief, but they've just upgraded the brakes and upgraded the suspension, really, and just a few cosmetic changes. That's for the most part. But it looks nice, but that fairing is kind of boxy and angular, I gotta say. But it does look nice. Now there's lots of accessories that you can get with this already, and it's part of the press release that I got as well. And these are all the photos from the press release. So they've got dual discs at the front, Brembo brakes as well. So it's all looking nice. And there you go. I mean, as I say, I don't hate it. I just think it just looks a bit odd. It reminds me of something, and I can't figure out what it is. It just reminds me of something. I wish I could remember what it is, but there we go. So now this version here, this is their customized version. Well, when I say customized, is that you've got these accessories that you can buy, and basically these are like bar risers, that kind of thing. You can have tinted windscreen, all that sort of stuff. So you can suddenly make this very street-like, very sort of club style, just by stuff that they've already got on the shelves, so you can add it on. It is about 20,000. I think it's about 19,900 and change. Let's just have a look here. 19. sorry, £19,995 here. You know, but there we go. Let me just check. Okay, so I'm buffering really badly. Well, I say my signal is going out 100% here. So I really can't say. It could be your side, but please, anybody else watching, let us know if I'm buffering as well. My channel or my internet connection is saying 100%, so can't say. There we go. Right, I'll get into some of the comments as well. Tony Reed, this isn't for me because I'm about touring, but Indian continues to knock it out of the park. Harley just keeps getting cracked in the teeth. I would imagine. I think this is it. I mean, you either like this kind of bike or you don't you? But I've got to say, this. I mean, I've read some reports this week. Sorry, this last week. They got the Fox rear shock absorber as well. It just looks nice. But oh yeah, this is a ride command that they're going to be rolling out on lots of other bikes now. This is already on the Chief, but it's going on the 2023 FTR as well. And this is got built-in sat nav, digital display. I mean, it all looks really, really nice. TM13, good your end. Okay, great. So as long as it's good for you. There we go. So that's there as well. Right. So look, I just think it's a really nice bike. I was in a dealership yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. No, or the day before. No, yesterday. Sorry, I've lost track of days again. In an Indian dealership yesterday in London, in Kensington. Very nice, very nice chaps, and the bikes look really nice. I think the colour's really nice, and but they had, what was it? It wasn't a dark horse. It was a Super Chief. No, it was just the Chief. I think it was there. It just looks so nice in that sort of grey colour. But then they brought out this Sport Chief, and they basically upgraded the suspension, upgraded the brakes, styling cues, that fairing. Yeah, I think you either like it or you don't. I think it just reminds me of something. I don't know what with them. But I thought it was an interesting move from Indian to bring this out, and there's been a couple of reports that I've read, or a couple of articles that I've read, and they're saying, okay, well, is this the Harley Davidson killer? Is this the one that's going to really put Harley Davidson to the sword in terms of the cruiser market? And a lot of them say, no, this is a direct competition to the lowrider S. This is really going to put the cat amongst the pigeons. So I'll tell you what, let's just get into there we go. Let me just get into the specs and I'll show you exactly what it's what. Right, so the specs are that its engine is still the Thunderstroke 116, which is exactly the same as this. This page here is the Chief Bobber Dark Horse, and then this page here is the Sport Chief. 1890cc, still compression ratio is exactly the same, still 162 Newton meters for both bikes. So in terms of the engine itself, no difference, right? No difference at all. Drivetrain, still the same gear setup gear setup and clutch setup. Gear ratios are still exactly the same. Let me just check that. Yep, no difference there whatsoever. So you think, well, okay, what's making this really sporty? Is it just styling? Is it just a bit of a suspension setup? Is it a braking setup? Okay, let's get onto the chassis. Okay, so the Sport Glide, that's my bike. The Sport Chief has got the KYB inverted telescopic forks, 130mm, and the Dual Fox piggyback shocks, 100mm. Whereas the standard Chief, that has got just telescopic fork, 132mm, and dual shocks with adjustable preload for 75mm. So they're just uprated shocks, much better uprated shocks. The brakes here, you got dual Brembos, 4-piston calipers for the front, 320mm rotors or discs at the front as well. Let's just have a look here. And for the Dark Horse, the Chief Dark Horse, you've only got a single rotor, 300 rotor disc at the front and 4-piston caliper. A single 300mm rotor at the back or disc with 2-piston caliper. And single, yeah, so it's the same. So it's the same rear brake setup, but it's just got dual brakes, dual discs at the front and Brembo brakes at the front as well. Wheels are, just these are cast wheels on the Sport Chief, and it's the same sort of exhaust, so no real difference there. So that is it really. Dimensions are pretty much exactly the same. The only difference that I could see is the weight of the Sport Chief is 311, whereas the Dark Horse was 315. So what's that, 4 kilos less? I'm not sure where the weight saving is on that, by the way. But look, I mean, so pretty much is exactly the same, as you would imagine. It's just got a different bit of styling, and it's just got those performance upgrades. Well, not performance upgrades, but I'd say handling upgrades, right? Suspension and brakes. I think it looks nice. I've got to say, I really do. Let me just show you the sort of website here. I think it just looks like a really nice bike. It's a cruiser bike. It's not for touring. Well, it is, I suppose. You could put any bags on there, of course. But if you wanted a tourer in inverted commas, then obviously you'd go for something else. In the dealership, which I saw Challenger there. Chieftain there, I think they had a couple of others. I mean, it's a nice dealership. It was right in this middle of Kensington and Chelsea, which is quite an affluent area of London, and it was a nice little dealership, I got to say, and it's cool. It just had a cool vibe about it. But hey, listen, this is over to you guys, really. I mean, what do you think? Do you think this bike with this styling? Is this the bike that could challenge Harley Davidson in the cruiser lineup? So here's something that I was really surprised at when I was speaking to the chap in the dealership yesterday. I thought, I know Indian motorcycles in this country, and yes, all over they've been coming on strong for the last few years. Pre-COVID, COVID hit, and that affected everybody. And supply chain issues and all that, so that affected everybody, right? But I thought they were selling more bikes, in this country at least, than they actually are. The guy said that Indian motorcycles, I can't remember what he said. He said it was about 660 motorcycles that they'd sold last year, 2022. And because I went in to test ride the FTR, I thought, and we were talking about the FTR, and he said, 660, 650, I can't remember what exact figure, but it's certainly less than 700. And I said, oh, you mean the FTRs? He said, no. All motorcycles, all models. That's all they sold in the UK last year. They said they were hoping for 800. Now, I don't know how many bikes they're selling in the United States, obviously, which is going to be their best market, in Canada, of course. But obviously, it's not going to be anywhere near what Harley Davidson are doing. But I just thought they'd sell a lot more bikes than that. Now, what they're saying is that for 2023, they're hoping to push that and push through 1,000 bikes. I mean, that might be a bit difficult, given the prices. And this is, let's say for this Sport Chief, it's £20,000, and I just wonder if this 20,000 or 19,995 is that justifiable? I don't know anymore. I don't know about prices anymore. I have my thoughts, and they always seem really expensive. But I suppose if you're comparing like for like in terms of what you get with the Indian and what you get with a Harley Davidson, it's you know, you kind of think, well, actually, you're getting a better deal. Are you getting a better deal? I think you're getting a better deal. Looks-wise, it looks great. I think they've moved away from that whole Victory styling now. They definitely have their own sort of way about it. But that fairing at the front, the more I look at it, the more it looks a little bit 80s to me. It looks a little bit, you know, those bolt-on fairings from back in the day, those white plastic ones that you could just bolt on, and it just yeah, that I kind of get it. It kind of looks a little bit like that. But there we go. Yeah, Robbie, it's a great answer to the lowrider S for Indian riders. Yeah, it won't convince Harley lovers to convert like myself, but it looks like a good answer for their fans and someone who has no brand preferences. Yeah, I'd say that. I'd say that. I mean, I think if you're looking at price against price, looks against looks, you know, or specs against specs, and you're, as you say, you're not brand loyal, then I think, you know, I think it's got, because they're both expensive bikes, right? Or, you know, the Indians and the Harley Davidson, they're both expensive. We're not talking cheap bikes here. But you're looking at that, you think, oh, that looks pretty good. You know, the black on black, or the red on the black. I'm like, I've forgotten what the colours options are here. I think it was, let me have a look. It is black smoke, black smoke, ruby smoke, or stealth grey. Let me just quickly bring that up for you. That's the stealth grey. That's the grey that I like, that, you know, a lot of people are getting a bit fed up with now. But this is the ruby smoke, and that's the black smoke. I've got to say, it looks, the red looks a lot better on the pictures than it does on the, you know, the color chart there. The grey always looks nice, and the black always looks nice as well. But I think it's one of those things. Agreed, the club style isn't for me, but it looks like a safe bet by Indian with the current trend. The comparative value in all their bikes makes them competitive with HD for sure. I agree. I think, you know, I always questioned whether Indian had the style cues than, you know, better than Harley Davidson. I thought, you know, Harley Davidson on some of the bikes edged it. On other bikes, I don't think they did. The Chiefs, I think they're nice bikes here. I really like the Chiefs. And this sport bike, this Sport Chief, is the kind of bike that I would say, yeah, I'd definitely ride that. I'd like to ride that kind of bike. I could see myself on that quite comfortably. But again, it's value, isn't it? It's about pricing. And at the end of the day, I'm not so sure that this as one motorcycle is really going to dent the Harley Davidson numbers. You know, I think it might take a few, but not a lot. Team 13, my FTR was 1573. Liked it looked better than the 2023. My fuel's 1573. Sorry, you've lost me. What's 1573? Was 1573. Style-wise, Style-wise, HD still takes it, but that's just it for me. I agree. I think overall, I think the style is still on the Harley Davidson side, but that's about it, I think. But I think this, looking at, you know, made. Sorry, your 1573 were made. Yes. Well, the interesting. Okay, let's talk about the FTR. The FTR, which the FTR Carbon, which I test rode yesterday. For 2023, they've changed it up. It's gone more like black and grey. Dark grey, I think it is. Let me just quickly check this. It's like a dark grey frame. They got rid of the yellow and the red accent pieces as well. Let's have a look. There we go. Still got Olin suspension and everything like that. I mean, it looks. Let me just do this there. There we go. Let me just quickly put that on there for you. Hold on. That's where it is. I mean, so I test rode the 2022. There's a few subtle changes. Mainly it's just appearances. The 2023 model has that ride command, which is that digital display, round display. But it's still got Öhlins front and rear suspension and everything like that. Yeah, so it's I've got to say, I mean, I'm not pro or against Indian or Harley Davidson in terms of that kind of perceived, clash there. But I've got to say, if I was a street rider, in terms of that's all I was doing and that's all I was going, that FTR, which is nearly over £16,500, nearly 17,000, I suppose, if you put a few add-ons here and there. The FTR R Carbon. If I was that sort of street rider, that is a bike that I would definitely consider. Definitely consider. That bike is awesome. And you watch my review or my kind of watch along of it, right? It's not sport. It's not like a sports bike, like 1000cc, GSXR 1000 or anything like that. It's nothing like that, right? But what it does, it's just you're in that upright riding position. You've got that kind of handling, street riding handling. You're perched on top. It's a great riding position. The tank is just at the right size for me, that you don't have to go searching for it with your knees to grip it. It's fat enough, the tank, so you just add a little bit of pressure and you still got your body shape, your body position nice and comfortable. It takes your pressure off your wrist, because I'm quite a tall guy. It takes the pressure off your wrist and you just ping it and woof, that thing flies. And especially in the city, because I was riding around London, the city, in and out of traffic, flicking it right, flicking it left, really quick, really nimble. 17-inch wheels on this. Oh, it was just a fantastic bike, and refreshing to ride a bike, a V-twin this is, and you think, well, this is kind of, if you're looking about other V-twins that are not Harley Davidson, like the Ducatis, like some of the old KTM's, where else am I thinking? It's there or thereabouts. And this is what I've always said, and this is what I've always been told about the FTR, that people who are outside the American bubble, they looked at this FTR and they said, wow, this is a good bike. This is a really good riding bike. As I say, this is not a touring bike, of course, although you can go touring on any bike, right? But this is a bike just for hooligan fun, great street riding, and it's just, you get on it, ride, and I love it. And I thought it was a brilliant bike, I've got to say. I was very, I was very impressed with it. That's all I can say. I took it down to the Ace Cafe. I did my review there. I took a couple of pictures there as well. I took it all around. I took it onto the main stretch out of London towards the motorways. Pinged it up. Lots of torque on it as well. Top gear. Pinged it, and it pulled. It pulled like a train. And very easy just to blip up and get on high speeds. It was good. Again, not sports bike like performance, but enough, more than you'll ever need, if you know what I mean. Especially for urban street riding, I think it was a great bike. But the Sport Chief, and then I came back and I saw the press release from the Sport Chief, and I thought, wow, hold on, let me just kind of think about Indian a little bit more. And this is why I wanted to make the show today, make the show about Indian motorcycles. Are they really going to be the Harley Davidson killer? Are they the ones that are really going to challenge, for the next couple of years? Well, I think, before we all get carried away here, let's just take stock a little bit. Okay, the problem with Indian, and this is a problem with them, is that they are too close to Harley Davidson in terms of price, in terms of most of their bikes. They kind of look similar. They're operating in the same space, in the same bubble, if you know what I mean. The FTR is a complete departure from that. but all the rest of their bikes are kind of in the same space, and they're kind of, you know, you know, you're dealing with expensive bikes. You're dealing with people who are, you know, have money in their pocket, let's say. Yes, I'm not saying that they're not just, you know, hardcore riders either, but what I'm saying is they're going to attract a certain type of rider who can afford it, basically. And maybe it's an older type of rider, okay? So they're kind of on the same par in terms of demographics and everything like that. And price and type of bike and type of riding style and their kind of lifestyle angle, if you know what I mean. But there is a definite difference between the two, and this is kind of came out from my visit as well. Whereas Harley Davidson, it's Harley Davidson, it's got to be Harley Davidson. Whereas Indian seem to be, even through a lot of their material, which I get through press releases and things like that, they seem to be a lot more welcoming of other motorcycle riders, of other motorcycle brands. And maybe the FTR kind of symbolizes that. Is that they're saying, well, we're not just American V-twin cruiser or, you know, touring bikes. We can do sporty bikes, street bikes. And this is where Harley Davidson have had to, you know, they've tried to do this now with the likes of the Pan America, the Revolution Max engine, the Nightster, the Sportster S. They haven't been successful so much because the problem is you're dealing with a fan base, a Harley Davidson fan base, who they don't really like change. They like the cruisers, they like the tourers. They don't really want to have anything else. Whereas possibly the Indian crowd, possibly they don't really want the Harley Davidson thing anymore. They want something else. And maybe Indian can offer them something else. The problem is they're operating at different levels. Indian are still way, way low in terms of dealership network, especially in the United States, the availability of bikes and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, Robbie, the FTR is still the standout bike from Indian, yes. TM13A, same I own a Fat Boy as well. Yeah, nice. Yeah, Fat Boy's nice. Here we go. Robbie, agreed, Alf. Indian cannot beat Harley at their own game. Need to do their own thing, and I think they are. I think they are doing their own thing with this FTR. I think the problem is to say if you're an American brand, you are going to operate in that V-twin world. So if Indian, you know, wanted to do something completely different, they're going to have to bring in out a 3-cylinder or a 4-cylinder engine, inline 4cc, you know, inline 4-cylinder engine, that kind of thing. But they're not, so they're always operating in that V-twin world. Andrew, love both brands. Yeah, wish I had deeper pockets. Well, I think that's the problem, isn't it? You see these bikes and you think, well, I really want one of those. I really want one of those. Interesting what they said. I was speaking to the guy from Indian about the FTR, and he was saying that he prefers the FTR Rally. And so it's got different wheels. I think it's got spoke wheels, chunkier wheels, taller wheels as well, and it makes the bike come upright a little bit more. And he says it's more of a better riding position for him. And he said, you know, whilst it hasn't got the suspension setup of it, everything else is pretty much the same. He thinks it's a better overall package for many people, and certainly that would be his preference. And that's why he kind of invited me. He said, well, they might be getting one in a couple of weeks or maybe a month, couple of months, whatever it is. You know, give me a call when it's in for me to test ride that one as well. Because, you know, I like the Rally as well. From that one, the one that always attracted me recently to the FTRs was the Sport, and then I started looking at them, and we were having this conversation. So, well, if you're going to go for the Sport, but you want to have really good handling, you might as well go for the FTR Carbon because it's got the Olin suspension, where the Sport hasn't got that. And if you wanted to upgrade your Sport with Olin suspension, you're pretty much around about the same price anyway. So you might as well go for that. But what we were saying is actually you don't need to go for these expensive sports or carbon FTRs. You can go for just the normal FTR or the FTR Rally, and it's still a great bike. It's still, you know, for most people street riding are not really going to notice the difference between, you know, the Olins and standard suspension, really. So, you know, it was an interesting visit. Always. Whenever I go to anywhere, I'm eyes wide open, always observing, seeing what's going on. It's just my nature. Okay, always wondering, always looking around and see what's going on, taking it all in. But my ears are always listening to see what's going on. And especially if I'm by myself, if I'm in conversation, it's sometimes hard to do that. But if I'm by myself, then it's I could be doing something else. But if I'm hearing somebody else, hearing their conversation, kind of eavesdropping a little bit. But you're kind of thinking, what's been said here? What's going on? So it's what the salesman. Okay, this is salesman talking. So you got to take that as you wish. But the same was he was kind of talking about Indian and Harley Davidson in terms of from Indian's perspective. And it was just very, very interesting. It was just very interesting to see the other side of it and what other people think of Harley Davidson, or what other people think of another motorcycle brand, like Indian, in terms of they seem to be that they're much more interested in just riding, not the group thing, not the clickiness, not the nonsense that you have with Harley Davidson sometimes. And look, every brand is going to have problems, and every brand is going to have issues, and they're all struggling to catch up from COVID and supply chain issues and all that sort of stuff. And yes, they're all getting expensive these days, right? Unless you're talking about Indian brand motorcycles or Chinese brand motorcycles, right? But everywhere else is just really expensive. So they're, but they seem to be that they are an alternative to what people think Harley Davidson is all about. And it was interesting, he was saying that they've never seen there to be any kind of competition with Harley Davidson. There's never any kind of angst, or there's never any kind of rivalry, whereas Harley Davidson do, or people who ride Harley Davidsons do. They're anti-Indian. They're anti what they are, and this kind of feeds into what people within Harley Davidson hog groups, let's say. Stereotyping here, of course, I'm generalizing. You can't say for everybody, of course, but many people say, well, if it's not Harley Davidson, it's nothing. And he was telling me about his people he knew, and I think it could have been his father-in-law or something in the United States, because he used to live in the United States as well. He used to work at Harley Davidson dealerships, and he said he had his father, or whoever it was, who would go with his friends of Harley Davidson riders. They go to a show. There was an Indian dealership there, and his father wanted to go and see the Indian bikes and sit on them. His friends were no, don't want to see them, don't want to have anything to do with them. Like steadfast, it's Harley Davidson or nothing. Whereas the Indian guys were saying, well, we'll just ride anything. Bring anything to be with us. There's no problem. Just if you're on two wheels, who cares? We don't care. And it seemed to be, of course, there's always going to be a bit of digging, a bit of banter and everything, of course, but fundamentally they don't really care. Whereas Harley Davidson, in certain circles, it's, oh, no, definitely not. So I thought that was quite interesting. And then obviously, the guy actually ended up not being friends with these guys anymore. He got rid of a bike, I think, because he was, I'm not sure why, and then in the end he decided to buy another bike and went and bought an Indian, and he's happy as Larry. So what does that tell you? Dave's Classic Cars, hi, hello. Harley Davidson has way more loyal buyers than Indian ever has. Possibly, yeah. I mean, definitely a lot more buyers, definitely, and loyal buyers. Yeah, possibly, yeah, okay, I get that. I just put an order in for an anniversary Fat Boy 2 with my Street Glide Special. Oh, wow, okay, you got a Fat Boy anniversary. Nice. What, you traded in your Street Glide Special, have you? Or to add to your Street Glide Special? I'm not sure what you mean there. But yeah, look, nice. Look, if you want to go for it, go for it. I think, the problem is that, as you said, I mean, there are a lot more Harley Davidson dealerships. There's a lot more of a scene, isn't there? It doesn't matter which way a country you go. So I suppose I look at it like this: that if you want to be something different, if you want to act, if you want to stand out from that scene, right, or that kind of riding style, right, and you're riding around. If you ride a Harley Davidson, people kind of say, "Ah, you ride I ride a Harley Davidson, right?" But people are going to go, "Oh, you ride a Harley." But if you're riding around on an Indian, people are going to be looking like a double take and saying, "Oh, that's a bit like a Harley Davidson," but it's not. What is it? What is it? Those people who are not in the know, those people who are not necessarily motorcycle fans, let's say. Those of us who are all into motorcycles, we know what Harley Davidson and Indian is, right? We know a Suzuki, Kawasaki, or whatever. But those who don't, will kind of think, "Oh, that bike, it looks like a Harley Davidson, right? Oh, it's a Harley. Oh, no, it's not. It says Indian." So if you kind of want to be a little bit different, I can definitely see why you would definitely go to Indian, that it's an alternative. It's a different way of riding. But essentially, you're riding very, very similar bikes, very, very similar style bikes. Now, who copied who, all that sort of stuff, who knows? Who knows? TM30, I think the Rally, is the best buy, and you can just add as you go. Oh, really? Okay, yeah. I would say I've seen it, and I'm sure I've seen it at shows. But I think I saw one 2 or 3 years ago. Where they had it on the Indian bikes were on these tall pedestals that really, really tall, and you were kind of looking up at them like that, and it was really quite good marketing, because you're kind of looking up in awe and wonder at these bikes that are up there, you see, and or maybe not so much high, but if you're looking at the handlebars, it was up there, but the bikes were kind of like this level, and I saw one there, but I say it was I think it was either like green or like a sandy type colour. I can't remember what it was. TM13, they knocked off the price on the R since it was 2022, and it was winter on the floor. So they knocked the price off? They knocked it down? Okay, I thought the. Okay, well, I think I can't remember what he said between the 2022 and 2023 bike. I can't remember if he said there's been a £500. I think here is a £500 price rise. I think it was. Can't remember. Robbie, I tried to buy an Indian as my first bike, but dealership wouldn't get off their smartphones and give me any help. Went to Harley, been riding it. Well, I think this comes down to nothing to do with Indian, as in the company, and nothing to do with Harley Davidson as a company. This comes down to dealerships, doesn't it? And it just comes down to people who work in dealerships. That's it. Dave's Classic Cars, to add to my Street Glide. Yeah, okay. Indian and Harley Davidson were bitter rivals in the beginning of both companies. Yeah, Indian tried to run. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, the rivalry in terms of the companies and let's say the fan base goes back years and years and years, right? So it's always been there. But because Indian weren't, they say they're the oldest of the two. They're not the oldest motorcycle company, for a start, and they're not the oldest American motorcycle company. But these are the two that are still going, right? But Indian have been consistent, so they've obviously gone out of business and come back under Polaris and all that sort of stuff. But but Harley Davidson have been constant. They've always been there. So you could say that, yes, there was a big rivalry before, but now there isn't. Now there isn't, because they're just too far away from what Harley Davidson are. But they're producing really good bikes, and I think this is where many people hold Indian in high regard. If you consider Harley Davidson in terms of all the little things, the silly little things, the stupid little things that people complain about, like LED lighting and all this sort of stuff, you don't get that with Indian. You have different engines, like air-cooled or liquid-cooled. So you have that with Indians, and you didn't have that with Harley Davidson for a long time. Like, now they've got the Revolution Max engine. You know, Harley Davidson still don't have an FTR, although I suppose you could say, well, if they brought out the Bronx, you know, that could, you know, and made it like a 1200cc, 1250, that could be like an FTR Challenger. So, you know, you give them one, you take with the other with these companies. For me, it's a little bit of that. I don't think there's a rivalry there is, but I think Harley Davidson, the company, perhaps, I'm not even sure the company, but certainly the fans possibly have more of a dislike for Indian than Indian riders have a dislike for Harley Davidson. And I wager, and I think this is fact as well, a lot of the business that Indian motorcycles have gained over the last few years has been from disgruntled Harley Davidson riders. They've been disgruntled, they didn't like the way it was going, so they've moved over to Indian. Now, the question is, you know, was the grass greener on the other side? I mean, I dare say that there's been problems on the Indian side, and of course there has. There's been, you know, supply chain issues, and I'm sure there might have been reliability issues. I don't know. I'm just sort of asking the question here. You know, so who knows? Thomas, hello. I'm not sure, but it seems that Harleys have more aftermarket upgrade parts. Again, not sure. I have not researched it. I would imagine so. You know, I don't think Indian are any slouches. I think they've got a lot going for them, and each bike you can buy the accessories for it. But I don't think it is as plentiful from a company-owned accessories catalogue, let's say like Harley Davidson. However, the aftermarket world, whilst the aftermarket world in terms of accessories does lean towards Harley Davidson, there is tons and tons of accessories for Indian motorcycles as well. So I would not be surprised. Yeah, you know. Kevin, good evening. Hello. I have Harley Davidson Cruiser Tourer. I know you do. Yes, you do. But also very different type of HD2. I know you do as well. Oh yeah, that's the Nightster, isn't it, that you got? No, I always get your bike wrong. The XR 1200, I think it is, isn't it? I don't think Indian are a credible threat to HD. No, I don't think they're a threat anyway. The Bronx. Well, I think the Bronx. If they would bring out the Bronx, I think if they bring out the Bronx and they styled it a little bit differently from the prototype, I think that would give the FTR a run for its money. If it's a proper street bike, which this FTR, it's a great street bike. It's a fun bike. This is the bike, let's say the Sunday afternoon, you go out on your cruiser. You go out on your Road King Special, Kevin. I go out on my Sport Glide. We meet up at a nice cafe. We go on some nice twisty roads. We go to another cafe somewhere, you know, two old gents, you know, just having a cup of tea, maybe a slice of cake, because we all like a slice of cake, don't we? And all that kind of stuff. It's gentleman riding, right? Then I say, do you know what? Sod this, Kev. I'm going home and I'm going to get onto my hooligan bike. And I get on my FTR and go brap it around for a little bit. That's what Harley Davidson need. They need that bike for the hooligans within us. We still like a bit of the older pleasantries, but we need a bit of rough and tumble every now and again, and that's what they're lacking a little bit. You're not getting that with the Nightster. You're not getting that with the Nightster. You're not getting that with the Sportster S. No chance. You know, the Pan America, which I thought was done pretty well, but interestingly, from insiders of the industry, and I was speaking to the Indian guy there yesterday, he's basically saying, well, you know, for the American market, it's still not really seen. The problem he was saying, which is very insightful, I suppose, and I can see the argument here, is that the American market, especially because it's the biggest market for Harley Davidson in India, right? So we'll just talk about the American market for now, because every other market around the world is going to be different, and our tastes are going to be different. So our leanings are going to be different, right? But he was saying that Harley Davidson have tried to do something different, like Indian. They've tried to be like Indian in terms of doing different stuff, right? And Indian have already gone there. They've already done liquid cooled. They've already done the FTR. They've already done different types of bikes. You know, they are trying to move into other markets. Yes, very small gains here, very small movings, but they, in many ways, they're a lot more advanced in terms of products and everything. Harley Davidson have been stuck in this air-cooled tourer and cruiser world for a long, long time. But they have tried to change. Revolution Max Engine, Sportster S, Nightster, Pan America. But the problem is to say that it's not a Harley Davidson company problem. This is a dealership and the fan base out there who just don't really want change, who just don't really want it. So they're basically saying that the dealerships out there in the United States are saying, we don't want your Sportster S, we don't want your Nightster, because guess what? Nightster last year was a bit of a flop. I think it only sold about 900 units worldwide, or maybe the Pan America I think sold quite a few thousand worldwide, and the Sportster S I don't think has been a big seller worldwide, and certainly don't think it sold very well in the US as well. So it's very interesting that they've changed up the Nightster already, only after the first year. You think, well, what's going on there? They brought out another variant. It's almost like they're trying to push these bikes that pretty much the American audience, for the most part, doesn't want them, because all they want is the cruisers and especially the tourers. So the criticism can't really be with Harley Davidson. It's more like the dealerships who just don't want to push them, because the dealerships, they want to sell bikes that are going to sell, right? They don't want to sell bikes that are not going to sell, or they have to convince people this is a great bike. You know, you're going to like this. This Nightster 975, actually, it's a really nice bike. It sounds a bit tame, but beneath that, it's, you know, you could use all the marketing spiel you like, you know, to, you know, raise the profile of the bike. Oh, this Sportster S, it looks a little bit low, but I tell you what, once you're on it, it looks, you know, that kind of thing. But they're just not doing it. They're just not pushing it. And you know, I think if you're going to go to a dealership that has this kind of mentality and saying, well, I'm not really going to talk too much about these Revolution Max bikes, let's just concentrate on these big tourers, right? And that's what that's the observation that the Indian, let's say the guys from Indian, are saying about Harley Davidson. It's not the company per se that doesn't want to change. It's the fan base, really, and especially the dealerships. And so, because the dealership network in the United States, and I've heard about this many times, they've got too much power. They've got too much power in what they want to sell and what they want to push. There we go. Raymond, hello. Sorry, Kevin, let me just quickly get yours. Oh, sorry, I've lost your thing. There we go. Wrong one. Nope. Just do this. And there we go. Right. Yes. I think people, Morris, I think people are slowly waking up to brand loyalty in all markets. Yeah, I think there's always going to be that, isn't there, I suppose. Kevin, XR1200, yes, my mate was on the Nightster. They need a modern take on the XR. Do you know what? I was thinking that exactly the same thing. You know, and yes, Cake, and yes, Brock. So, I was thinking that the other day, actually, the XR, because I thought, well, why abandon that? Why abandon that? And they think, well, why can't you just do the XR in this Revolution Max engine? You know, that kind of XR styling. Why can't you, you know, and bring it back? You know, Raymond, I have had all bikes. The only one that I ever broke down on was a Harley in Scotland. Oh, okay. All that said, there we go. Sorry. all that said, why do I like my Harley the best? Why does everybody that passes my house stop and look and talk? Okay, you've hit the nail right on the head there, Raymond, because I've talked about this a lot in the past, right? Is that there are very few brands, certainly, and I don't think there are many brands at all, but certainly very few that have the appeal or the curbside appeal or the curb appeal or hold the fascination more than Harley Davidson. I don't think there's any other bikes out there. And when I talk about that curb appeal, I'm not talking about people who ride motorcycles. I always talk about people who don't ride motorcycles. And the ones that grab the attention the most are the style and the sound of Harley Davidsons. And that's been my experience as well. Definitely. And it's a holistic view of riding motorcycles, isn't it? It's a holistic view of looks, sound, vibration, feel for you as a rider, but also how that translates to other people as well. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people mock it, some people thrive on it. But essentially, it's one of those things. I can't remember, there was a commercial here in the UK a few years ago. I can't remember what it was, but the tagline was whatever, it might annoy you or it might do, but it's rare, you can rarely ignore it. I forgot what I'm paraphrasing there, but it's something you can't ignore. You could try to ignore it, whatever, but you know. Kevin, Exile was different but failed. Yeah, that was 15 years ago now. Crikey, it's 15 years ago already. Time has come. Bring the Bronx. Look, you have a cheerleader here for the Bronx. I definitely say that should have come out. TM13 here. I'm not married to any company still. They start paying until they start paying me too. Absolutely right. Yeah. Absolutely right. They can't push. They can't push a new Sportster on everyone here in America and then price it like a big twin cruiser. The pricing is killing these new Rev Max bikes. Pricing is everything, isn't it? Pricing and the way you market bikes is everything. You're absolutely right. And this is kind of where I kind of raised an eyebrow. The guy from Indian, where I spoke to him yesterday, and said, well, they want to push 1,000 bikes. If they've only sold over 650, whatever it is, last year in this country, and you want to push 1,000 bikes in this climate where people may not be buying bikes and may not be, wanting to do that. They're maybe still struggling with finances and stuff like that. I kind of think, are you really sure you're going to sell these bikes? Hey, maybe you will, maybe you won't. I don't know, but I think and good on them if they do. But it's all about pricing. They're still expensive bikes, so let's not forget this. And these other manufacturers from other countries are coming on strong, or they will be coming on strong with bikes. New technology is changing, evolving. Electric bikes, whatever, small displacement bikes, different riding habits. Older people getting older, younger people coming into the biking scene. Maybe not in the same numbers, maybe not with the same kind of enthusiasm for motorcycling, but with an enthusiasm just to ride bikes in terms of a mode of transport, if you know what I mean. So it's a different thing, but pricing is the key thing. And if they're too expensive, pricing in terms of the value, what people are satisfied to pay. Because if something is too expensive and they don't think they're getting the value, then you think, well, I'm not going to pay it. So let's use that Indian. That Indian there, the Sport Chief, was just shy of 20,000. Somebody will look at that and they go, well, I kind of like it, but I'm not going to pay 20,000 for it. Where somebody else will look at it and say, wow, that looks really, really nice. 20 grand, yeah, I'm paying that. That looks great. Now, you could say this about any bike, right? You could say if somebody really likes something, they kind of ignore the price. But if you're having to be convinced by a bike, especially with dubious styling of these bikes, and they're expensive, then you kind of, Robbie, 15,975 Sports is not going to sell in America. Well, interesting that there was I featured an article a few weeks ago where they now what did they matched up a Nightster, yes, a Nightster with an Indian Scout and Honda CMX 1100, right? And basically, they all have pros and cons, but you can't beat the Honda out of all of them in terms of everything. Rideability, comfort, price. Price is a fraction of what these others are charging as well. You know, yeah, you might not like the Honda, let's say, because of the way it looks, but in terms of the value and everything, the way it rides and everything, it's hard to disagree with that. Now, if you're going to say like 15,000 or whatever it is for that bike, and you say, do you know what, I don't even really like that bike, that Sportster or the Nightster or whatever it is, do you know what, and I can't afford a cruiser, a Softail, and I can't afford a Tourer, but I'll tell you what, I'll go into the used bike world and I'll go and buy a used bike. The problem is that the company, as I keep on saying this, the motor company, are not getting the sales revenue from that. The dealerships are, unless you're buying it directly from the company. In the US, they've got that HD marketplace or something. Then I think something, either all or some, goes back to the company. But most sales around the world, used bike sales, or all, don't go back to the company. It's just the dealership, that kind of thing. Andrew, it does make you wonder what their end game is. Ducati luxury appeal with Honda's consumer base. Yeah. Same with what I'm wondering if they come out with a 975 Pan Am, if they price it too high. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it also, I did lots of lead features about obviously Harley Davidson over Christmas and before the launch. Surprised, it just wasn't talked about. And you think, is a 975 Pan America, is it a good idea? Is it a good idea to have that? And yeah, price again. The thing is about big ADV bikes is they're actually very good tourers. They're very good tourists. So even if you don't want them as an off-road bike, which I would say, if you want off-road, don't go for and you want to do serious challenging off-road, don't buy a big ADV. Just buy a much smaller bike, right? And I've always said that, and I'll go to my grave saying that, because you'll have so much more fun on a much smaller bike. The problem is if you want to do any distance in between. So that's where the big ADV comes in as a tourer, and then you can do some, trail riding, track riding, and they'd be great. They are fantastic off-road bikes, as long as it's not too challenging. But the big ADV bike is a great tourer. It's a fantastic tourer. So the Pan America is a great tourer, and it's a great big ADV bike. Yeah, I've ridden it. It's a nice bike to ride. It's great. It's got lots of power. You put it in sport mode and it flies. It's good. It's a good bike, and it's the looks I'm still not 100% sure about, but there you go. Raymond Humphreys, they're not interested in cash buyers. They're pricing them to attract PCP, etc., where the money is made. Just my opinion. Yeah, I would not say you are wrong at all, Raymond. Actually, I would say this has been going on for a number of years, not only in the motorcycle world, but in the car world as well. And that's why people have been driving or riding around on near new vehicles for the last sort of 10, 15 years. It's the rise of the PCP. It's a rise of buying it on the never. It's a rise of you never really owning the vehicle. You're just leasing it. So people buy it, and then what they do, they don't care about, they're just going to buy that bike, and after 3 years they're going to chop it in, maybe hardly ridden it or driven it or whatever, or maybe they have, who knows, and they just get something else. So that's what keeps on fueling the system. So, the problem is the PCP, the leasing agreements, they just get more expensive this year. So whereas in the past, manufacturers and dealerships could rely upon people to come in and just put a bit of money down and put the rest on finance, now people are hesitating because of the higher interest rates associated with these PCP hire purchase agreements. And that's the problem. That's the problem facing every motorcycle manufacturer. Some motorcycle manufacturers have tried to address this with launching a much discounted rate for their own, company PCP agreements, let's say, or they're trying to offer a much better package in terms of servicing, in terms of support, maybe extended warranty periods and everything like that. So they're trying to offset this a little bit, the rising costs, with giving you a much better deal. But essentially, it's a lot more expensive. If the Pan America was more reliable, I would buy one, but I'm scared to death of them now. Scared to death of them as for now. Yeah, again, I always say this about first-year bikes or first 2-year bikes. I would say let them sort out the problems first, then buy one, or then buy a brand new one. So I think it's the new bike disease, as it were. I personally think, I think if you're going to buy a touring bike, a big ADV touring bike, personally, I would not go for a Pan America. Okay, let me qualify this. If you're in the United States and you want a big ADV bike, I would buy a Pan America and go touring around on a Pan America, right? The only reason is because you've got so many dealerships all over the place, and if something happens, you'll be able to swing in somewhere. Anywhere else, I would get something like a BMW GS or a Triumph Explorer or a KTM, something that is very well established. However, that being said, the Kawasaki Versys or the Suzuki V-Strom, big ADV bikes, they're great. They're great packages in terms of riding anywhere else in the world. But the United States, I would just go for the Pan America, right? Because of that. Because now most of the problems are sorted out, so you'd be able to get on it and away you go and have great fun. About a month ago, a guy was in a HD garage complaining about his and the bugs they had, because they had lots of bugs. They had lots of issues with it. I think it's supposed still are some ongoing, aren't there? But it's. Look, I'm not here to defend the Pan America. Of course, I'm not. There's a lot that could have been improved, should have been done before it was ever released. But I think it surprised a lot of people, that bike. It surprised a lot of people from within the off-road world, the adventure bike world, how good it is. Because it's from Harley Davidson. What the hell do they know about producing these kind of bikes? But this is what I mean. They've tried as a company, and this is they got to be congratulated for that. I think, to try and do something different and produce something different. But maybe it just hasn't. It's never going to be a big seller. The question is, I said about the 975 Pan America, is that the Pan America 1250 sold in decent numbers, I think, around the world. I think so. I think it's, I'm not saying fantastic, but for ADV bikes, I think it sold in the American market was its biggest market, and it was the biggest selling ADV in the United States. That doesn't mean it was the biggest ADV seller. I think the BMW is still way above in terms of global sales of the ADV itself. However, in America, I think it was the biggest. It was the number one selling ADV bike. But I think a lot of that has to do with novelty. A lot of that has to do with people just wanting this, bike and seeing what it's all about and everything like that. The question is, will it still continue to sell in big numbers? So then, on the back of that, if they wanted to try and bring out a 975, a smaller version, which isn't really that much smaller, is it going to sell in bigger numbers? So, if they sell if they're going to bring out a 975, they have to make that bike smaller, physically smaller, and way less as well. That's the whole point. They're bringing out. You can't just put a 975 engine in the same frame and everything, and say, well, actually, you're just getting a weaker bike. You know, you might as well just stick with a big Pan America and not have the 975. But if you shrink everything down and make the bike smaller, then you've got a different bike, right? You haven't got a bike with two engine options. You've got a different bike. So you got a different bike, and then all of a sudden that becomes more agreeable for lots of people, you know. Robbie, what happened to the Sport Chief? Well, the Sport Chief is coming out. They've just released it yesterday in terms of the press releases, and this is what this show is about. Really, it's about Indian, you know, coming out and, you know, challenging, and a lot of reports have come out the last day. I've been reading from around the world, where industry people are sort of predicting that this Sport Chief could be the one that really challenges Harley Davidson, certainly in the cruiser world, in cruiser lineup, you know, to steal a lot of market share. They're saying it could be the Harley Davidson cruiser killer, the low rider-esque cruiser, you know, killer. I'm not so sure about that a bit personally. I think it's a really nice bike. I think so. I mean, let me just show you the pictures here again. I think it's a really nice bike. It looks great. I think the fairing is a bit square on the front, but it looks really nice overall. See, from this angle, I quite like that fairing. It's just from the other angle I think it looks a bit weird, but from this angle I kind of like it. I kind of like that sort of clunkiness there as well. Yeah, that's a nice bike. I've got to say, that is a nice bike. So the problem with this bike here, let me just see if I got a rear view. So in the United States, you got the side-mounted license plate here. I'm not sure for the UK market whether it's side-mounted. It could be a standard feature. I don't know. But it looks nice. I mean, look, it's a nice bike. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely a nice bike, and it's certainly a bike that you think, well, yeah, if I'm looking for something different, then yeah, the Indian is the way to go. Robbie, you got a 21 lowrider S and can't imagine ever parting with it. Well, I you know, why would you? That's the thing. Why would you? It's a great bike. You know, and I think I think this feeds into whether people are kind of dissatisfied with Harley Davidson in terms of the ownership, in terms of the dealership network, in terms of if there's a problem with your bike, getting it fixed, and the whole warranty saga and issues over the last few years and everything like that. I think it's kind of feeds into those people who are just not sure, but they still want that kind of bike here at Indian as a viable alternative to say, well, they're the same kind of price, the same kind of bike, the same kind of look, but they just got a different vibe about them. And I think that's what it is. The only thing I would say about Indian, again, this is purely an observation, right, is that Harley Davidson seem to be the vibe. Let's say the vibe is more kind of there's a little bit of cool with them, but it's more traditional lifestyle-y type vibe, right? It's Harley Davidson, you know. It's kind of I don't know what I'm trying to say, but they've got a certain look, they've got a certain vibe, whereas Indian, they seem to have. It seems to be a bit, I don't know if this is the right word, but a bit more hipster about them. They seem to be a bit more, they should all be having, you know, long manicured beards and slick back hair. And the guy in the dealership was a little bit like that as well. But, you know, coincidentally, no, he wasn't. He was just a little bit, but, you know, but it kind of, are you a beard model? If you're a beard model, you can ride an Indian. You know, whereas, you know, you wouldn't get that on Harley Davidson, but, you know, an Indian. And it's almost like, their dealerships are a little bit more boutique. They're their merchandise is just a little bit edging on that side of the culture, of the style, whereas Harley Davidson isn't. It's still a bit on the other side, if you know what I mean. Look, maybe it's just my brain, the way I'm working, but I see them. I see the imagery. Because I got to say, this is another thing from Indian. Their media stuff for us in the, in the media world, as it were. Whether you're a newspaper, whether you're a magazine, whether you're doing content like I'm doing on videos or a website, right? Their stuff that they provide you is great. They put you a press release. It's regular. They send me emails, and their site is just full of photos that you can use. They give you a press release, and a lot of the let's say they've already crafted their press release, what they want to be out there. So actually all we need to do, and you could do this Harley Davidson, in fact you can do this with all press releases, if you wanted to, you could just cut and paste the whole lot, put it into a blog post, and there you go, that's it, job done. But the whole point is that you break it down a little bit with photos, and you break it down with some commentary on what they've done, but essentially it's all there for you. So they do that really, really well. The imagery is good. They've got their own YouTube channel as well, and they supply all the links for the YouTube channel. So you just push that in. It's got a much better vibe. The only problem with Indian in this country, well, it's not a problem. It's just the way they're set up, is that most of the dealerships are not Indian alone. Okay, they're not Indian alone. They have multi-brand dealerships. So the owners of the dealerships also can sell Suzukis, Hondas, whatever. Yeah. Whereas for Harley Davidson, most of the dealerships are just Harley Davidson. Whilst the dealership owners may have other dealerships that are Triumph or BMW or stuff like that, most are just standalone Harley Davidson. Whereas Indian, I believe this, I could be completely wrong here, but I believe most in the UK at least are multi-brand dealerships. There's only a handful which are standalone Indian. And the problem is, if you're dealing with brands that are, let's say, quite expensive, quite niche, quite, that kind of thing, having a standalone dealership for one particular brand of those sorts of bikes, you're not going to make any money. They won't be able to stay in business. And this is what the guy said to me as well. It's very hard for a standalone dealership of one brand to make any money, whereas multi-brand dealerships, and this is where I released this, again, information which I heard yesterday, is that an Indian chain of Indian dealerships over here, a chain of dealerships that sells Indian, is also just about to become a Norton dealership as well. So there we go. I mean, look, I think in the United States especially, you find Indians being sold, because their parent company is Polaris. They're in dealerships, but it's not just multi-brand motorcycle dealerships. They're in multi-vehicle dealerships, aren't they? Or sales areas. So you could be next to a snow plow or something, or next to a 4x4, or next to a quad bike or something, whatever Polaris sell or whatever else they're selling. So it's not limited to motorcycles in all areas. And I think I think maybe people have a different expectation when they go into a Harley Davidson dealership. Some people like that sort of hard sell. Some people don't. Some people like the whole vibe of a Harley Davidson dealership. Obviously, the whole community, the whole hog thing. People kind of latch onto that and they hold that there. Whereas you go to an Indian and it's possibly a different vibe altogether. Maybe that just isn't what people want. Morris, sorry, let me just, I think I've missed some here. There we go. Here we go. Right, Thunderbag. I think the thing I find bad about Indian is the cost of their parts. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Again, that is one thing that I've definitely heard about Indian. They are quite pricey on their parts. I looked at one of those solo seat Chiefs, looked at the price of a dual seat, 1,300. Have they lost their minds? I think they've all lost their minds, in all fairness. Of course they've lost their minds. Absolutely. Of course they lost their minds. But I think you'd have to just, instead of going to, I think somebody was asking about, are there many accessories and parts for Indian motorcycles? For me, I wouldn't go to Indian and buy an Indian seat. And if I'm looking for something else, I would, unless you wanted the Indian logo, of course, right? So I get that from that point of view. But if you just wanted a dual seat, then I would be looking into the aftermarket world and see if they got something. I grew up in Robbie. I grew up in small town America with Harleys everywhere. Yep. It's part of the culture of some people. Look, I made a series of videos last year about this, about why do people buy Harley Davidsons, or in fact, for that matter, why do people buy any kind of motorcycle? And one of the overriding reasons why people buy a particular brand of motorcycle, it's largely determined how near they are to, or how near they live to, a dealership of a particular brand. And this goes the same for cars as well, right? If you live right next door to a Harley Davidson dealership and there are no other dealerships in the area, the chances are, if you want a motorcycle, you're going to go to that dealership and buy it. Okay, you're not going to go out of town, out of state, just so you can go and buy a Honda, or just so you can go and buy a. You might do, but the chances are you won't. So there's always going to be a lot more numbers of people riding that brand, and it's noticeable where you go, even in this country. At times, especially different times of year, it's noticeable that if you've got a dealership in a particular area, that you see more of those bikes in that area. If you don't have a dealership in that area, you see less. Well, I certainly noticed it as well. Morris sounds like a Swiss Tony from the Far Show. Who, me? Yeah. Listening to podcasts is making love to a beautiful woman. One of my favourite characters, Swiss Tony. TM13, I wanted an Indian. There we go. So I wanted an Indian as a kid. When I read a story about James Dean buying his, family was Harley. I didn't. I know back in the day, quite a few of the stars had Indians. I didn't know James Dean had one. Dave's Classic Cars competition is always good, whatever the product is. It would be a very dull world if everybody liked the same. Well, yeah, absolutely right. Indian dealership here in Tulsa is also BMW, Honda, and Polaris ATV stuff. Yes, that's what I was kind of meant is, they sell all sorts of stuff. Don't get me wrong, there are multi-brand dealerships here in the UK. There's a couple I can think of that sell Harley Davidsons, but they also sell Honda, Ducati, Kawasaki. So I know one in particular that's not a million miles away from where I live. They've just got a whole section of industrial type units, retail units, right? And each one that's your Harley, that's your Kawasaki, that's your Honda, that's your whatever. They're all owned by the same company. It's all one big company, right? Whatever. So, there's there's another brand. I'm sure there's another chain. There's another multi-brand dealership. I think one end they had the Indian, the other end they had the Harley Davidson as well. So I have seen that before. If I wanted more sporty bike, I'd take the upcoming Street Triple over an FTR and save a good 6K. Again, I think it depends where you are in the world as well, of how much you'd be prepared to pay. I'm fully aware that in the United States you pay a lot less in relative terms for your Harley Davidsons and your Indians than we do over here. We pay a lot more for them. A lot of that has to do with import duties and everything like that. Conversely, in the United States, you probably pay more for Triumphs and BMWs, so they're less competitive. Those bikes are less competitive against the Indians and the Harley Davidsons in the United States, whereas over here they are a lot more competitive on price because they're European-made bikes, if you know what I mean. Yeah, mine sold more four-wheelers than motorcycles. I like them. I like more the mom and pop feel of the Indian dealerships. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. You know, it's. I mean, I haven't seen that over here. I haven't seen that kind of. There is another one. They said it's actually on my way to go and see my parents. So do you know what? I may pop in there, and I've got the general vibe that is a little bit like that as well. This is an Indian dealership here as well. So. Robbie, I would buy a Triumph too if I had a dealership nearby. Closest one is 2 or 3 hours away. Yeah, again, it's I think Triumphs are great bikes. Don't get me wrong. I think great bikes. Yeah, closest. I understood what you meant. Yeah. It's they've got some great bikes. They've got some great models. They've had some great bikes over the years as well. I've owned a few of Triumphs as well. So you know, I'm not anti-Triumph at all. I think they're great bikes. BMWs, I think, are great bikes as well. And I think what I like about the BMWs is that some of their custom incarnation. If you go to my website right now, I've just released a post a couple of yesterday or last night about BMW that teamed up with some custom designers. And they turned an R18 into this Iron Annie custom bike, and it's based off of a Junkers 52, I think it is, warplane or transport plane, what it was, and that was flying up until the 70s and 80s or something. And one of the owners nicknamed that plane the Iron Annie, so they've kind of taken inspiration from that, put different paneling on it and everything, and it kind of it looks cool. But I think what I'm trying to say is that BMW do some great custom bikes as well, and they've been doing it for years. They teamed up with Roland Sands a few years ago. He was doing a lot of their bikes, especially when the R18 first came out. He was doing a lot of their bikes as well. And you know, Roland Sands seems to, you know, have his fingers in lots of different pies. As I say, he's teamed up with Buell for that Super Cruiser. Obviously BMW, I think he still has a big relationship with them. So you know, I like BMW for what they do. I don't like all their bikes, but I like a lot of their bikes. I like Triumph as well. Yeah, if you'd asked me about 2 or 3 years ago about Indian, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not. You know, I was indifferent. I was kind of like that. You know, Harley Davidson, yeah, fine. But Indian, and I think a lot of that was that there isn't a dealership right next door to me, so it wasn't I was getting eyes on. I thought it was a bit of a cop-out for them when Polaris ditched Victory and they just went on with Indian as the brand name and everything. And I thought, well, and then you're still getting kind of Victory bikes. And I thought, well, you know, in style. And I thought, well, you know, so I think a lot of people were pissed off with Polaris then and the way Indian came in. But I think the more I've looked into them over the years, the more I've always paid attention to what they're doing. The more I think, okay, yeah, I can see it. I can see why I like them. I've always, you know, liked the bikes. The only thing I would say on some of them, I wasn't too sure on the styling, but I think since they've got into the more the blacks and the greys and the less away from there. I'm not really a chrome kind of person. Although my bike is chrome, the Sport Glide, I am more into the black, the mean and moody, I've got to say. So, you know, when Indians started producing a little more bikes there with the reds and the blacks and the greys as well, especially, and less about the brown bags with tassels on and the white and the green Springfields or, you know, all that sort of stuff. And I don't like those kinds of bikes. You know, I think if you're going to have a Tourer, I think I want it to be a proper sort of Tourer, proper bike. I don't like all the frills. I don't like personally, that's just my taste. I know some people love it. I personally don't. So when I saw those first Indians, I remember going to a show and they had them all up on racks on a wall. It was like some warehouse display. And they looked good, but a lot of the bikes that was on the floor, I thought, it's a bit chintzy. I just thought it wasn't for me. It wasn't for the British riding roads that I'm used to, which is usually full of mud or usually full of crud, or they're wet roads and, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, you ride one of those bikes, I'll probably only be able to ride it 2 weeks of the year in the dead of summer. The rest of the time I wouldn't be able to ride it. Whereas I didn't see that with a lot of the Harley Davidsons which I was starting to ride. I thought, no, you can still ride these, or I definitely would still be riding these any time. So, but obviously Triumph never had an issue with that, and BMW and KTM's, and obviously all the Japanese brands never had an issue with those sorts of bikes. So I think when it comes to Indian, I thought, yeah, not too sure about that. Yeah, I love the Bonnevilles, beautiful bike. Yeah, nice bikes. Yeah, we don't have the Euro bike sellers in the state. Was the main reason I didn't go with BMW, be paying for any work. Yes, absolutely right. Royal Enfield, I've got a lot of time for Royal Enfield. Lot of time. Yeah. Yeah, great bikes. I think, again, if they're big sellers, if you've got a dealership nearby, definitely. Don't like the leather daddy look either. Yeah, the leather daddy look. Yeah, very funny. But look, hey, listen. I could go on all night, really, couldn't I, about this? But Indian, I think, have the thing is, Indian, they're possibly not even looking for the big sales figures. They're not looking to make a massive impact in the motorcycling world. I'm kind of guessing here, but they're probably looking just to make small gains and just do their own thing and sell enough numbers that they can be profitable, and just keep it as a company that's growing, as in just the motorcycle part of their business that is growing, and they're getting decent numbers, and they're producing cool bikes, and they're appealing to the hipsters with the beard the beard models and all that sort of stuff. I suppose now I've got let my beard grow a little bit. I just haven't got the. I'll have to wear one of those Elvis wigs or something. Just to make myself more Indian-like. But no, I think they've just become really great bikes to ride, or to look at, and to ride. And I think if you look at the looks have got better. The colour combinations have got better. I think they're just more. They've got more modern, and I think that's definitely improved. Some of their bikes are still like that, of course they are, and you're never going to be able to get away with that. But some of their bikes are. I mean, the Challenger. I think for me, if I was looking at the Indians in terms of the cruisers, the baggers, the tourers, whatever, it would be Dark Horse for me. That's the way I would go. I would go Dark Horse. I wouldn't go any other way. It would have to be Dark Horse. And same for Harley Davidson. I would go Street Glide Special, Road Glide Special, Road King Special. That for me, that's the kind of look that I would prefer over the Chrome. Now, obviously, if my Sport Glide was available in the black at the time, I would have definitely gone black engine, that sort of stuff. Although, because at the time I was thinking, I'll buy this, I would save a bit of money, then I'll buy all black replacement parts for the Chrome. But actually I got used to it, and I was quite happy with it in the end. So I think there's a nice balance between a bit of Chrome and a bit of black engine casings and stuff like that. But I still say, if I had a preference, if a bike is black at the start, then I'll go black. I'll be a black bike, blacked out look as much as possible. I still like it. I still like that look. Yeah, a few accent pieces here and there, but it's still whatever. Yeah, Martinez. Yeah, Fox rear shock. Yeah, nice. Koa B front, Brembo brakes. Nice. Yeah, I think it's a good looking bike. I think the the Sport Chief is a good looking bike. Nice performance upgrades on there. Your engine performance is still exactly the same as far as I can tell. No, I don't think there's a different tune on it or anything. It would have been nice if they'd done this Sport with a different tune. It would have been nice on that. But it may do, but I don't think it has. But yeah, but in terms of rideability, a sportier feel in terms of the way it rides. The rear shock, upgraded rear shock, the upgraded front. The brakes, dual disc at the front with those Brembo brakes. Yeah, nice. Yeah, good. I would love it if Indian said to me, Alf, how about fancy, taking out a sport chief for the day? How'd you fancy? I've been, oh, don't mind if I do. Thanks very much. And I'm pretty sure that I would really enjoy it as well. I'm pretty sure that I would. I mean, interestingly, what he said, the guy. This is very interesting. What he's saying. This is what I always found. Those in the Harley Davidson world who like sport glides, who value sport glides, kind of obviously we agree because we're sport glide riders, right? But he was saying actually, because he saw me on my bike, right, and he said, yeah, your bike is a really good bike. So he's not anti-Harley Davidson, or Indian are not anti-Harley Davidson. This is what he was trying to tell me, that we're not anti-Harley Davidson. But he was just saying that, he said, your bike, the Sport Glide, is a really good bike. I said, yeah, I know it is. I know it is, yeah. But he was saying in the American market, it hasn't been well received, or it wasn't well received. It wasn't selling in great numbers. And yeah, we always knew that, and that's why it was dropped from the American lineup, and that's why it hasn't come back. Whereas the rest of the world still saw it, and it was, it's possibly seen as a better European bike than anything else. But the Sport Glide, for me, is a great bike. So the problem is, it doesn't really, it stumbles into a kind of no man's land of being a tourer or being a cruiser or being whatever. So that's why it's fallen foul in the American market. But, many people agree, especially those outside of the Harley Davidson bubble, that Sport Glide is a great bike. And what he was trying to say, this guy was saying, Harley Davidson have tried to produce great bikes, and they've tried to produce bikes that are different or try and break the mold a little bit. But this is what I was saying earlier on, and what he was saying as well, is that this is not a company issue. This is the dealership network issue, and the fan base, they're just not ready for it, or they've just kind of been brainwashed into thinking these are the only bikes that you can buy because we're telling you that these are the bikes that are going to be best for you, but secretly these are the bikes that are going to make us the most amount of money. Okay, Harley Davidson are not too concerned about that, but that leaves little room for them to try and push other types of bikes or other types of styles onto people if they're not really interested. So this is why it kind of makes perfect sense now. This is why the Sport Glide, let's say, as an example, was not deleted around the world, whereas we kept on being told, no, it is being deleted. It is being deleted. This is we, as in, from within the rumor mill, as it were, and it's saying, yeah, it's going to be deleted. So I got slated by certain people around the world saying, yeah, you said it was going to be deleted. I said, well, it has in the United States. I just didn't know it wasn't going to be deleted all around the world. But the information that I was getting was, as like a lot of other people at the time later, but I was one of the first ones saying this right at the start, was that actually it looks like this won't last beyond 3 years. This won't go beyond 3 years. And yeah, the more and more we got closer and closer, it says, yeah, it's being deleted. The problem is it's not being deleted elsewhere. And now I've kind of really looked into this approach by lots of motorcycle manufacturers now to say, actually, motorcycles are released that are specific to a market, and a lot of that's to do with emissions regulations, what they can get away with, what they think a particular market will like in a bike and what others won't. So but the point is that other manufacturers, other people can see a bike from Harley Davidson and they say that's a great bike, but within Harley Davidson themselves, or within the dealership network, or within the fan base itself, they may not like it because it is a departure from what Harley Davidson are supposed to do. But as other companies like Indian, they're saying, well, just because they're supposed to do that, there are many people who don't like that want something different, and this is where Indian come in with their sort of bikes. Loader Rider S is still a little lighter and more lean angle. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I haven't looked into numbers as well, so I'll take your word for that. Come on, Indian, get this man on a Sport Chief. Please get me on a Sport Chief. Get me on any of them, I tell you. The Challenger Dark Horse there. Oh, that I mean, it's a big bulbous thing, isn't it? That fairing on the top. You know, by all accounts, it's a great bike to ride as well. I always like the Sport Glide, the original Lowrider. Well, yeah. I mean, this is what a lot of people say. Why have you brought out the Lowrider ST when you've got the Sport Glide there? And this was added more fuel to the fire, where people were saying, or you know, the rumours that I was getting, the information that I was being fed was saying actually because they've got the Lowrider ST, the Sport Glide is definitely going to be deleted all around the world. Because you've got the Lowrider ST, and you kind of think, well, why have you got two mini baggers there in the cruiser lineup? It kind of doesn't make sense. But you've got one that's a little bit cheaper, I suppose, you know, and one is like more your traditional bike, and the other one is your Lowrider ST, which is more your performance bike. So maybe that's the way it is. I hope all the bike companies have a record. Yeah, well, I think some of them have. Some of them will, definitely, especially those who are producing the small bikes, those who are producing lots of different types of bikes. But other bikes, you know, like the Indians, like the Harley Davidsons, yeah, let's hope so. But I think, you know, they're going to struggle against the economics of this world, aren't they? You know, but inflation and rising costs and all that sort of stuff. Right, anyway, so that has been everything for today. This is, I think, an episode on Indian motorcycles. I guess I had a really good experience yesterday at the dealership. I wasn't there long, you know. It wasn't as if I was their best pal and, you know, hanging out all there. And, you know, and I didn't tell them what I was, what I did, and, you know, but, you know, it was there to look at the FTR, which I'd looked at, and I was really interested in riding it for myself, that as a potential different bike for the future. It was also part of the custom bikes, the two custom bikes that are being built, part designed by the ex rally driver Sebastian Loeb, and in with Tank Machine, I believe, custom bike builders. They're producing two of these bikes, and they're going to be raffling them off, so you can enter a competition. You can go to Indian Motorcycles right now. There is a link there as well. I wrote a blog post about it, so if you go to my website, scroll back through the old blog post now, and you'll find it there. So part of that was to say, hey, look, you know, all you need to do is come in and test ride one of these bikes. So that's what I did. I test rode one of those bikes. And they told me a little bit about it, and, you know, they said, yeah, you know, you would be entered into the competition. I mean, obviously, the chances of you ever winning something like that, but just imagine if you won something like that, right? If you won this custom FTR, beautiful bike. It looks really, really nice in the drawings that I've seen, or that are on display. Beautiful, beautiful bike, right? But it's only two in existence. There's only two, you know, they're identical. So one, the ex-racing driver, rally driver, Sebastian Loeb, is going to keep one, and you'll have the only other one in existence. That's amazing. That'd be amazing. You know, there we go. Right. So there we go. That's got wrong one. I think that's it for tonight. Let's just have one more look at this Sport Chief. There we go. It looks nice. The more I look at the fairing, the more. Oh, I know what it is now. I know what it is. I know what it reminds me of. We've got these little cakes in the UK. They're like pink and yellow ones, and they've got little dripped icing over them. What the hell are they called? They're called I'm gonna have to Google it now. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Now you'll see where my mind is going. Hold on. Wait a minute. Let's have a look here. Pink cupcakes. What they? No. No, small. No, they're not cupcakes. Small, pink and yellow, square iced cakes. What are they called? Oh, come on. Somebody will know them. No, not Battenberg. Not Battenberg. They're... Oh, crikey. They're not fleur de lis. They not fleur. Oh, they're like a French sounding name, but they're British cakes. Anyway, I wish. Oh, crikey, what are they called? Anybody know? French fancies. There we go. That's it. Hold on. No, wait a minute. Thank you, Morris. Thank you. Yeah, come on. Pictures. Right. There you go. So, if I can... let me just share this with you. Hold on. Right, so... The photo, right? So, here we go. I think... this is my mind on... Where's the good shot of the fairing? There we go. That fairing reminds me of these French fancies. There you go. This is what they are. Little chocolate. There you go. Look at that. Maybe not. The closer I look at them, I think, no, maybe not. There's the headlight. There's the square kind of. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. I'll have to show you a big picture. Is there a big picture here? Let's have a look. There we go. I think they do. It looks like that. It looks like that. It's a square kind of thing. It was bugging me. What did it remind me? There you go. That's it. You can tell all your friends. The fairing looks like some French fancies. A French fancy fairing. That's what it, and it rhymes as well. Triple F. A French fancy fairing. Try saying that 10 times after a few pints. Yeah, well, yeah. I think it's a take on the Memphis Shades Road Warrior fairing. I'm just messing with you. But yeah. I still say a French fancy fairing is a much better name for that rather than a Memphis Shades rip-off. Yeah, French fancies fairing. There we go. And with that, all I can say is thanks for watching. Thanks for being in the chat and all that kind of good stuff. And oops, wrong one. And well, I'll be on with another video coming very, very soon. I'm sure we're a live show. Check out all the shorts. I'm trying to do a lot more shorts. I'm kind of reinvesting in shorts again. Whilst I said I wouldn't do them again, but I'm just giving my opinions on everything. On that, whether it's motorcycle specific or not, I don't care. Anything on there. Bit of fun stuff, bit of opinion, bit of what I'm getting up to, where I've been, that kind of thing. The pheasant has no agenda. There we go. That's right. And anyway, so that's it. The videos are still going to come out. Yes, as and when I do them. Obviously, the live shows, as I keep saying, that's going to be my thing. What I'm going to be doing, and hopefully you'll be joining along and come and watch these on a regular basis as well. But all I can say is, well, for now, it's been emotional. Cheers now.